everybody. So today we are going to be talking about the planet Jupiter, but specifically we are going to be talking about Jupiter moving out of Taurus and Jupiter moving into the sign of Gemini. Jupiter will move into Gemini on May 25th of 2024, and it will be in Gemini through June 9th of 2025. Now, Jupiter will also turn retrograde this year, like always, and it will retrograde from October 9th of 2024 through February 4th of 2025. So the whole Jupiter and Gemini transit lasts a little over a year. But before we get into this, just a couple of housekeeping things. First of which is, since I will be playing with the star cards in this video, and I'm not above some shameless promotion of them when it's appropriate to do so, if you are interested in the star cards, I will put the link in the description box below where you can check them out or purchase them. They really are a very, very cool and useful tool to learn this astro language. I would think that even if I wasn't one of the creators of them. They really are very cool though. Second thing, my course, The Fundamentals of Chart Weaving, has not started yet. Well, depends on when you watch this video, I guess. I'm filming this in what is today's date? May 10th. The course starts on Thursday, May 16th of 2024 at 6 p.m. Central Time. There will also be another class. There are Thursday classes and Sunday classes this run of the Fundamentals of Chart Weaving. The Saturday class will start on Saturday, May 18th at 2 p.m. Central Time. You do not have to come to both classes, because whatever material is taught on Thursday will also be taught on Saturday, though you certainly can show up to both. If you feel like you would benefit from, sitting in on both classes, by all means, you're more than welcome to. If you've registered and you're a student, by all means, you're more than welcome to. But you do not have to show up to both classes, because the same material will be taught in both classes each week. I will put the link in the description box below where you can check more out about the course. I'll also put the syllabus in the description box below, a link to the syllabus to check it out. It is a very comprehensive course. It is 16 weeks in total, so it's long. I do not expect people to show up to every class. I know everybody has lives and shit to do, and I'm very flexible with that. The classes take place over Zoom. They will be recorded. They will be emailed out to students. Students will also get notes and homework and all of that stuff, because if I'm going to teach you, I want to give you every opportunity to learn. I also make myself very available to students that may have questions, concerns, whatever. I do make myself very, very available. The course is $650 in total, but I do offer payment plans, payment installation sorts of things, and I'm willing to work with people if, I'm willing to work with you and what would work for you, because I don't want cost to be a barrier to learning. For somebody that really wants to learn it, I don't want cost to be an issue or a barrier to learning. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to email me at ellie@saturnseason.com or saturnseason@gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the course or whatever. And I will keep registration open until the second week of class. I've done that in years past, in the other 2 years that I've done this, just in case somebody wants to jump on after the class about the signs. Yeah, but I do leave it open an extra week and then I close it. So by the week of, I don't know, I guess it'd be like May 25th or something. Around that time, that's when it'll be closed down. Registration will be completely closed down. Okay. Anyway, back to Jupiter in Gemini, transit Jupiter in Gemini. Well, first let's talk about planets, signs, and houses. In this formula, planets are what energy is wanting to be expressed, needing to be expressed, should be expressed. The houses are where or areas of life. That's loud as fuck. Sorry. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but it sounds like it's gonna fall in the house. I'm not cutting that out. I've tried. The wind has been crazy. I've tried to do this several times. I'm not cutting that out, and I'm not stopping, whatever. Okay, so a planet is what energy is needing to be expressed. The houses are areas of life or where something is expressed through. And then a sign is how energy is expressed. So Jupiter is a planet, so it is a what energy is needing to be expressed, wanting to be expressed, should be expressed, whatever. And what does Jupiter express? Well, Jupiter expresses things like wisdom and knowledge. This is something that Jupiter wants to express. Jupiter also wants to express abundance and generosity. Jupiter is a generous planet, generally speaking. It is the greater benefic. Generally pretty positive, though I will be honest, I've seen Jupiter, not necessarily Jupiter in Gemini, but just Jupiter in general, like Jupiter in transit with people, with client work. I mean, Jupiter can be an asshole. It can be. But generally speaking, it is pretty generous. It is pretty benefic, generally speaking. Abundance is something that Jupiter wants to express, though this can also lead off into overindulgence. So, abundance, it can be like too much of a good thing. Sometimes Jupiter can be too much of a good thing, but it can also be just the right amount of good stuff, the right amount of abundance too. Jupiter also wants to express understanding. Jupiter deals with understanding and assimilation of information, whereas Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini, Mercury is a planet that expresses information, but this is like taking the information in and shooting it back out like a hot potato. It doesn't understand or assimilate, generally speaking. That is Jupiter's job. And oftentimes, looking at a chart, you can kind of see if there is an ease or a challenge with the way somebody takes information in and the way they understand it and assimilate it, depending on what's going on between Jupiter and Mercury in the chart. Because sometimes there can be issues with that kind of a thing, right? And if there are, sometimes it's because they're, in a natal chart, they're doing something, they might have a difficult relationship in the natal chart, or a challenging relationship in the natal chart. Jupiter also, truth is a big deal to Jupiter. Now, truth is one of those things where it's like, what is truth? Truth is relative oftentimes to the person. What is truth to one person may not be truth to another person. That's a whole other conversation probably. But truth in general is something that Jupiter wants to express, whatever that truth might be. And then by sign would be how it's expressed. The house would show the areas of life that it's expressed through, this kind of thing. Beliefs are other things that Jupiter wants to express. Now, oftentimes when we talk about beliefs in Jupiter, or beliefs in Sagittarius, or beliefs in the 9th house, we are talking about religious beliefs. It's not just religious beliefs, though. Those can certainly play in, but that's not all of it. We could be talking about religious beliefs. We could be talking about political beliefs. We could be talking about philosophical beliefs. We could be just beliefs in general. That is Jupiter territory, what it wants to express. How it expresses it depends on what sign we're talking about. And then by house would be areas of life or where it is expressed through. Jupiter also expands what it touches. Again, this is kind of, and all of this stuff that I'm talking about, right? There can be, to all of the planets, to all of the signs, there is a light and a shadow. And it just kind of is, right? Like it is what it is. But I mean, even the things that sound really positive might not always be so positive. And sometimes the things that seem more challenging maybe might actually be might be able to be worked to in a more positive direction. So nothing here is really good or bad. And I say it like that because I think sometimes people think about these things in good or bad, black and white terms, and that's just not the case here. Even even the most challenging sounding things can sometimes be worked to somebody's benefit or in a positive way. And sometimes things that seem really, really great or really, really easy have their own challenges, perhaps even sometimes for being too easy. Okay. Yeah, oh, sorry. I was about to start talking about something else along these lines. But yeah, expansion is the same thing. Expansion is the same kind of thing. Sometimes expanding on something is a good thing. Sometimes it's not, right? But Jupiter does expand. Jupiter also explores. It's also the explorer, the seeker. Now, let's talk about Jupiter in Gemini specifically. Transit Jupiter in Gemini. Okay, now I'll start out by saying this. Jupiter is considered to be in detriment in Gemini. It is domicile in Sagittarius, at home in Sagittarius, because Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So in the opposite, and this goes for all of the domicile and detriment placements, wherever a planet is domicile or at home, in the opposite sign, it's considered to be in detriment. Now, when you think about Gemini energy, and I'm not trying to rag on anybody that has Gemini placements. Don't take it personally. I feel like Geminis, though, generally aren't going to take this too personally, Gemini energy, but I just want to throw that out there. I mean, I'm not talking shit. This just is what it is, Gemini energy, talking about what Jupiter wants to express, like wisdom and knowledge, right? Jupiter's also higher learning. Now, Gemini energy is more surface level. It's kind of jack of all trades, master of none energy. It can be. And again, not talking about anybody specifically or anybody's chart or whatever, just the energy in general is not, it doesn't deal with the assimilation of information. It doesn't deal with the understanding. It deals with taking information in. It does deal with learning, but again, it's not the assimilation that happens with the learning. So you can have wisdom that is more surface level, knowledge that is more surface level. When you see Jupiter in Gemini, you see transit Jupiter in Gemini, even in a natal chart, it could come out this way. And I am going to swing these in a slightly more challenging direction, these examples that I give, because Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini. So when you've got a planet in detriment and in a sign that it's in detriment in, it doesn't mean that it has to manifest in a challenging way. But it's easier for it to manifest in a challenging way than it is in a easier way. So I will probably swing these in a slightly more challenging direction, these examples. But yeah, wisdom tends to be a little bit more surface level. Knowledge tends to be a little bit more surface level. It's now in a more positive or easy direction, it could be that this transit could really help you to understand what you're learning. That can happen. And that in and of itself, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It just might not be super, super deep. Gemini energy is so quick. It is quick energy ruled by Mercury. It is fast. It's not super deep, which I think is why the understanding things at more of a surface level is more likely, or knowledge at more of a surface level is more likely with this transit. I also feel like this transit, an abundance of information, an abundance of scattered information, I feel like is possible. Jupiter being abundance, and Gemini energy being, expressing itself in information kind of ways, in informative kind of ways. There's I think about the world. as I'm saying this. And there is so much information constantly being thrown at us, right? I mean, there is so many different things going on in the world, so many awful, awful things going on in the world right now. And I kind of feel like this transit, not necessarily that it's going to impact these awful things going on or make them more awful, but I feel like it's just going to be even more like information just constantly thrown at us. And it's going to feel even, I feel like it's probably going to feel even more scattering than it might already. This won't play out for everybody in that way. You will want to look at what house has Gemini on the cusp in your chart, or where Gemini falls in your chart, depending on what house system you use and all of that. Because that is the house that will be impacted by this transit, or houses that will be impacted by this transit the most. Wherever Gemini is in your chart, transit Jupiter will be there, and this transit will play out in those houses, areas of life. But it does feel like an abundance of information, perhaps even an overindulgence in it, or feeling like there's overindulgence in it. I could see people feeling that way. Now, one positive or easy way of utilizing Jupiter in Gemini, seeking out things that make us curious. Gemini energy expresses itself through curiosity or curiously, if you will. Gemini energy is very, very curious, incredibly curious, which is wonderful. And Jupiter is the seeker. Jupiter seeks. So it could be that under this transit, there is a seeking out things that make us curious, things that we get curious about. Not just being like, oh, I don't have time for that, but, actually being like, I'm curious about that. I want to know more. Even if it is at a more surface level, right? Just seeking out things that make us curious, or that we are curious about. Another thing that stands out, beliefs and truth are also Jupiter notions. Things Jupiter wants to express. Gemini energy, though, is very, very flexible, very, very changeable, mercurial, can be a little manipulative at times, chameleon-like. I don't always think it's on purpose or for negative, nefarious reasons, but this energy just is so changeable. Gemini is so changeable that I feel like here with Jupiter and Gemini, you could be looking at things like beliefs changing, beliefs being very changeable. You could also be looking at the truth being bent. Now, I feel like, these kinds of things could play out on the world stage for sure. That seems very possible. I won't say more about that. But it could also, it could also be with the belief thing, the beliefs that you have or that one has, you could find them in like a real state of flux or really being changed up. Now, that's not always a bad thing, right? Sometimes our beliefs do need to change. Sometimes they do need to change. And we've just come out of Jupiter and Taurus. Taurus is fixed, is so fixed. I mean, with Jupiter and Taurus, there's the inclination for, with Jupiter having, it's still in Taurus right now, but, with it in Taurus, having been in Taurus, whenever you're watching this video, you could be looking at beliefs that are much more fixed or stubborn. And maybe they really needed to change. And now, Jupiter entering Gemini, it allows them to change. So that doesn't have to be a negative thing, but it can make it difficult to nail down beliefs, because while too much being too fixed about things sometimes isn't, obviously isn't a good thing. Neither is being so flexible that you don't have a decent hold on your beliefs. So it's kind of like meeting somewhere. Somewhere in the middle is probably the best way to go with this. Now, another reason why I feel like, so Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. And when I think about Mercury, Gemini, and Virgo, I think of a micro lens. And when I think of Jupiter and Sagittarius and Pisces, which Jupiter is the traditional ruler of, I think of a macro lens. And since Jupiter expands things, it's hard for Jupiter to expand the way that it wants in a sign that's more like a micro lens. It can make it hard for Jupiter to expand how it wants to expand. So expansion with Jupiter and Gemini can sometimes be a little wonky sometimes. Or expanding into too many things at once. Gemini energy can be a little bit more all over the place. So sometimes it can be expanding into too many things at once and not really, sticking to one thing. That's always a thing that can happen. Okay. I think those were all the examples that I wanted to give about that. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about the retrograde period from October 9th, 2024 through February 4th of 2025. Because when Jupiter retrogrades in Gemini, now, retrograde planets, now I talked about like detriment and domicile, and Jupiter being domicile or at home in Sagittarius and in detriment in Gemini. Now, I have this theory that when a planet retrogrades, that gets flipped around. Meaning, I actually feel like Jupiter retrograde would be at home in Gemini and would be in detriment in Sagittarius when Jupiter is retrograde. I feel the same way about Jupiter being, Jupiter is exalted in Pisces and it is in fall in Virgo. But I feel like Jupiter retrograde is actually exalted in Virgo and in fall in Pisces. So if anybody feels a little sideways while Jupiter is direct in Gemini, the retrograde period might actually feel better to people. It might feel a little, and the reason I say that, I've got this whole theory about retrograde planets doing this, all of them. I've got this whole theory. I won't go into all of that right now, but that is something that I go into in my class though, in my course. There's a whole class on retrograde planets, and this is absolutely covered because I do think it's a thing. I see it play out in charts with clients, not just Jupiter retrograde, but all the retrograde planets. I noticed this happen. But I think an example of why I think Jupiter retrograde would be at home in Gemini or domicile in Gemini. Jupiter retrograde, when Jupiter retrogrades, it's very, very important that the person come to their own beliefs from themselves. And also they understand things through themselves. But really, it's an intuition thing. Their beliefs tend to be an intuitive thing. Their understanding tends to be an intuitive thing. The Jupiter retrograde people, and when Jupiter turns retrograde in transit, it can impact people this way. People just might start feeling like they just know stuff. Things just come to them. They just know things, but they don't always know why. They don't always know the logical or rational or whatever reasons why. They know what they know. Why they understand what they understand. If somebody were to ask them to explain, it might be really hard for them to come up with, like, they know why, but to actually put it in a linear thought can be very difficult for Jupiter retrograde to do. Here's where Gemini comes in. Gemini energy, I feel like, is able to make logical, rational, or linear sense of all of this and communicate it out. Gemini communicates. And I have here in my notes, in Gemini, Jupiter is able to do this much easier. Though I will say this, probably is able to do this, Jupiter retrograde is probably able to do this best in Virgo, who's even more precise. Virgo energy is very, very precise, very specific, very, very discerning. So really, that's why I think Jupiter retrograde is more exalted in Virgo than in Pisces. In Pisces, right, your Pisces energy is so intuitive as it is, not very realistic, that this, this knowing, this understanding that somebody might have with because transit Jupiter is retrograde or whatever, and it's hitting something in their chart or what have you, it's harder to make logical, rational sense of it in Pisces, right? It's actually really hard. And same thing in Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is half on the ground, half in the clouds. That's how I think about it. Think about that sign energy among other ways. So again, Jupiter retrograde can have a difficult time completely bringing what they understand intuitively, what they believe intuitively. It can be very hard to bring it down to earth, bring it down to that micro level and share it back out, right? That can be very hard. But in Virgo and in Gemini, both the communication, the signs that deal with logic and reason, Jupiter retrograde can have a much easier time conveying what it needs to convey. So if anybody, I guess my point is, if anybody, and it does depend on your chart, what transit Jupiter in Gemini is doing to your chart specifically. You'll want to look at, what house it's transiting, like I mentioned before. You'll want to look at any aspects that it happens to be making in the chart to kind of get a better idea as to how this transit will actually impact you. Because, for some of you, you may not really notice this. For some of you, you may notice that there is like an abundance of information that happens to be coming your way, an abundance of communication. Let's say this is say Jupiter and Gemini is transiting your 4th house. This could be coming from family. And it could just, you might really notice this. Jupiter could also be squaring, say, your Mercury. It could be squaring your natal Jupiter, whatever. It really does depend on what's going on in your chart. But these are just some ideas of how this transit could look, what you could go through. Oh, I meant to mention the last time this was in Gemini was from June 11th of 2012 through June 25th of 2013. So if you wanted to, these things are cyclical. Going back and thinking about what was going on for you and even with the world from June 11th, 2012 through June 25th of 2013, it could give you an idea as to what could happen for you this time, and even on the world stage, what could happen. Because again, these things are cyclical. Things do come back around. Things do. May not come back around the exact same way, right? Oftentimes they don't, but the same kind of themes come around. And we could see that again. So going back through your own personal history from that time period and thinking about what happened, what was information like for you? What was communication like? What was sharing things like? What was perception like? Gemini energy is also perceiving and perception. What were things like with your siblings, if you have any? There are. Think about these kinds of things. This is a way of higher learning, right? This is like a higher learning sort of thing. It really is. It's not university, but it is a higher learning sort of thing that Jupiter would like. I feel like Jupiter would like this exercise. But yeah, if you feel like sharing anything that you think, any ways that you think this transit might play out, feel free to. Want to share how it's impacting your chart? Again, feel free to. I love hearing from y'all. And I think otherwise, I'm going to head off. But if you feel like you want a reading from me or whatever, I will put the link in the description box. Damn fly. Thing keeps buzzing around. I will put the link in the description box below where you can find me for that. Otherwise, I will see you all later.